Yesterday, we got to all witness the unprecedented national spectacle of a Supreme Court nominee being unable to provide a cogent answer to the question, what is a woman? So today, as a public service and as a personal favor to Judge Jackson, I'm going to describe a foolproof, data-driven, evidence-based method for determining if a person is, in fact, a woman. Number 1, unzip your trousers. Number 2, look between your legs. Number 3, do you see a big swinging dick? Number 4, if you answered yes to number 3, you ain't a woman, Jack. And speaking of people with big swinging dicks, William Thomas has been back in the news in recent days. William Thomas, you'll recall, is a big, hulking, 6'1", 175-pound, very deeply troubled young man. And as of Thursday last, he is also the reigning NCAA women's champion in the 500-yard freestyle. We are told by the people who fancy themselves our moral superiors and cultural overlords that there are only 2 reactions we are allowed to have to the story of William Thomas. Number 1, we can engage in joyous celebration and act like the cause of women's liberation is materially advanced by a dude beating a bunch of chicks in a swimming race. Or number 2, if we have any reaction aside from number 1, we have outed ourselves as horrible, hateful bigots who are probably also January 6th insurrectionists and climate deniers. And look, if you're in any way unclear on why this grown man has an unfair physical advantage over the women against whom he is competing, just look at a group photo. When your limbs are a foot longer than any of the other competitors in the field, you are going to win the swimming race. I don't care if you've been on estrogen for 10,000 years. Estrogen doesn't shrink your skeleton down to the dimensions of a female skeleton. It doesn't shrink your male lungs down to the size of female lungs. It does shrink certain other things. But if the rumors are true about the swinging good times that William likes to enjoy in the UPenn women's locker room, it hasn't done much in that particular department in this case. It is strange to me that all transgender people, with the exception of Bruce Jenner with tits, have seemingly reacted with total enthusiasm and approbation to the so-called achievements of William Thomas, when it's so screamingly obvious that he is cynically exploiting the transgender movement and the fashionable status that it currently enjoys in order to gain the athletic glory to which he deems himself entitled, but which he is not good enough to achieve in his own right, in his own division. And if you think I'm being too hard on the kid, just ask yourself this. Let's suppose, instead of being a fair to middling male swimmer in his first 3 years at Penn, let's suppose William Thomas was a dominant championship-level competitor in the men's division. Do you think there's any inkling of a chance that he still would have come back for his senior year, saying he was a girl now? Do you find nothing at all suspicious about the fact that this sudden miraculous gender epiphany, or whatever they call it, happened when he had only 1 year of NCAA eligibility remaining, and his results in the male division weren't getting any better from year to year? Because frankly, if you're that trusting, I'd be careful whom you hire to babysit your kids. To put it as simply and as elegantly as possible, William Thomas's championship career as a female swimmer is a straight-up publicity stunt, in the most literal sense of that term. He wanted publicity, he wasn't getting it, so he pulled whatever kind of stunt it would take to get what he wanted, which in this case was public notoriety and competitive success. We're not supposed to talk about any of this, naturally, even when what is happening couldn't be any more obvious. I don't think it's outlandish to say that right now, today, no group in this country, with the possible exception of billionaire big tech oligarchs, enjoys more political power per capita than transgenders do. And in hindsight, William Thomas is probably going to be seen as the tipping point, the thing that caused a nationwide reckoning, to use the overused term favored by the fake news media, where normal people were forced to look and acknowledge that women's sports were being made a mockery and effectively sacrificed on the altar of trans wokeness. And if this is allowed to proceed unchecked, if William Thomas provides an object lesson in how crappy male athletes can just swap out their gender and become dominant female athletes, then in 10 years' time from now, every individual record in women's sports will be held by a man with a big swinging dick. As a practical matter, women's sports in the United States will be no different at that point from women's sports in Afghanistan, which is to say they will be off limits to women. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think the widespread public acceptance of males in female spaces is quickly coming to an end now, if it ever existed in the first place, which I'm not sure it did. And I think William Thomas, when things are all said and done, will have done more to cause the demise of the radical gender ideology movement than any other living person. So, good job, William. Well played, young man, because there is nothing more heroic than exploiting a movement for your own personal gain while at the same time destroying that same movement. But in this case, in destroying the movement, he is at least inadvertently performing a valuable public service. What? Yes, I know it's been a very long opening segment, but I think William deserves it, frankly. And who asked your opinion anyway? From atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where the men are men, the women are angry, and the sheep walk sideways. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all ships at sea. Welcome to the program. I am your eponymous host and humble servant, and I mentioned at the top of the opening segment how taken aback I was when the Supreme Court nominee, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, at first flatly refused to answer the question, what is a woman? And then, when she was pressed further on it by Senator Blackburn, she managed to stammer out, I'm not a biologist. Which makes sense for all kinds of different reasons. For example, since I'm not a pro football coach, I am not qualified to say which team won last year's Super Bowl. Since I'm not a certified meteorologist, I take no position on what color the sky is. And since I'm not a veterinarian, I am in no position to say what the difference is between a dog and a giraffe. But there is so much else in that answer she gave, isn't there? With that forward attempt at brushing the question aside, she accidentally did great damage to her own side's argument. How? By accidentally conceding that the difference between men and women is a biological difference, which is a heretical thing to intimate in a world where men in dresses make all the rules. And would it have been that much worse if she had just fallen back on her kindergarten learning and said, boys have a penis, girls have a vagina? Would the world have ended if she had said that? Would the cause of transgender world domination have been fatally damaged? Would there have been a million purple-haired land whale march on Washington? Probably not. But you know what they got instead? They got headlines all across the country saying, idiot judge doesn't know what a woman is, which, take your pick, I guess. I ain't your press attaché. But that wasn't the thing she said in the first 2 days that shocked me the most. What shocked me the most, I don't know if the question was from Senator Cornyn or from Senator Lee. I only had the audio playing and it's hard to keep track sometimes. But the question was one about Supreme Court precedent. And one of the cases being referenced in the question was the Dred Scott case. You know, the Dred Scott case that's probably the third most well-known case in the history of the court after Brown v. Board of Education and Roe v. Wade, and which surpasses both of those in terms of its infamy. The case that you probably learned about in 8th grade, just like I did. But astoundingly, the first female African-American nominee in the history of the Supreme Court answered that question with, I'm not familiar with the reasoning of the Dred Scott decision. Go, what? Come again? On my master list of things I would never expect to hear a Supreme Court nominee say, I don't know anything about the Dred Scott case. It's pretty freaking high up on the list. But Judge, if you don't know what the reasoning was behind that decision, I feel like I shouldn't have to be the one explaining this to you since you're the woke racial justice warrior and not me. But if the task has to fall on me, then okay. Here goes. The court held in Dred Scott v. Stanford by a 7-2 margin that black people are not U.S. citizens, have no standing in U.S. courts, and enjoy no more rights under the Constitution than any other piece of chattel property. The Chief Justice of the United States in that case, an execrable, loathsome creature called Roger B. Taney, authored one of the most infamously repugnant passages in the history of American jurisprudence when he wrote in his majority opinion, quote, "A black man has no rights that a white man is bound to respect." The Dred Scott case happened in 1857. It was one of the proximate causes of the Civil War. But the current nominee for the Supreme Court seems to not know any of that. Furthermore, she answered a different question later in the day by remarking almost casually that she hasn't spent much time studying the history of constitutional law. Now, we often hear conservative commentators saying, the Constitution is not a living document. And I think that's a stupid thing to say, because I think it's dead wrong. The Constitution absolutely is a living document, and the place it lives is inside those 9 justices on that court, whomever they happen to be at the moment. As a practical matter, the Constitution means whatever they decide it means on whatever day they decide it. So it goes without saying that I have some fairly serious reservations about installing someone on the highest court in the land with a lifetime appointment who appears to be so shockingly unfamiliar with and seemingly incurious about the larger legal history of the country. She seems like a nice enough woman, well versed in the law insofar as she has to be in order to carry out her professional duties. But do we want people on the court who don't appear to have any sort of fully formed jurisprudential worldview or philosophy? A few of the senators remarked in their opening statements that during their private audiences with Judge Jackson, when they had asked her to describe her judicial philosophy, she said she didn't have one. And I, for one, have heard enough to believe her, to take her at her word. I think that's consistent with the rest of the answers she gave. Her knowledge of the law seems to be purely utilitarian in nature. She only finds out what she needs to know in order to do her job that day, which isn't necessarily a bad thing per se. Lots of people have that attitude toward their job. I have that attitude toward my job, but I am not the one being considered for a position that has 250 years of history wrapped up in it that's only been held by 155 other people ever. I don't think it's unreasonable to expect some modicum of intellectual curiosity or historical circumspection in someone being considered for a post like that. Also, I guess there isn't a very good spot to talk about this, but it needs to be mentioned. Has this person never spoken into a microphone before? Because it was really, really bad for about the first day and a half. I think someone finally talked to her at lunchtime yesterday and said, "Honey, maybe try not to deep throat the mic quite so much because the heavy breath noises and the percussive consonants are really not a good look." I thought it was standard practice for nominees, people they're about to roll out as national public figures, to have them undergo several days of media training beforehand, which seems like it would be even more important for something like this, because here you've got to be on live television for 15 to 20 hours in total, so if you have any weird tics or annoying mannerisms that might not play well on TV, it's the media consultant's job to cure you of all that before the cameras roll on the big day. But if that training doesn't include how to speak into a microphone without sounding like a heavy-breathing sex pervert, then it would seem there isn't much point in doing any of it in the first place. "I am Ketanji Brown Jackson, Supreme Court nominee. I don't have a judicial philosophy. Never heard of Dred Scott. Don't know what a woman is. But I'm very happy to be here." Now, if I'm being honest, it reminded me of Trump in the first debate with Hillary in 2016 when I was thinking something close to the same thing. This guy appears on television for a living and he's acting like this is the first time he's ever spoken into a live microphone. And I wasn't the only one to notice because he took the time afterward to blame the microphone for the whole thing. Even though I could swear there were a few times when he actually leaned in closer to the mic and then did the big sharp nasal breath intake. But back to the point at hand. I do have one polite request I would like to make of the society at large. Can we put an end to this thing where every woman thinks she gets to have 3 names? It started back when First Lady Hillary Clinton suddenly started demanding to be called Hillary Rodham Clinton, and nowadays it seems like every woman who enters national politics has to have 3 names. So I give credit, for the first time ever, to the Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, the California cackler, the Sacramento side piece, the Ugandan headhunter, for resisting this insidious trend and not calling herself Kamala Harris Emhoff. And it just now occurs to me, I can't believe it took this long, that I deeply regret the Harris Emhoff wedding not having taken place 30 years earlier when they were both young enough to have had children. Why? Because I so much wish they could have had a son named Jack. Think about it. Jack Emhoff. It would be just about the greatest real-life porn name of all time. And who knows, maybe Jeffrey Toobin already uses that alias for his after-work Zoom calls. So did anything happen in these 3 days that will change anybody's vote when the nomination goes to the Senate? No, it didn't. Though admittedly, I think I only managed about a quarter of the proceedings today. I slogged through the first 2 days just about in their entirety. The things I do for you people. We need to bear in mind that this nomination is not being seriously contested, since it doesn't change the ideological balance of the court, since you're replacing a reliable left-wing liberal with another reliable left-wing liberal, and even if you manage to get this nominee voted down, they will just come back with an identical nominee anyway. So what we're seeing this week is really just a made-for-TV entertainment product, a game show, to all intents and purposes, a dick-measuring contest between the millennial staffers in the room, because that's what these things are now. The Republican staffers feed questions to their senators that are designed to get the nominee to slip up and say something embarrassing or disqualifying, like, well, what about the decision in year such and such, in case so-and-so, when you said this and that? And as soon as the question gets asked, then the Democrat staffers all start furiously Googling to look up the case that was referenced and to quickly formulate an argument for why the judge's words are being taken out of context or misrepresented or whatever. It is basically a legal-themed game show, where 6 prosecutors and 6 defense attorneys all use this person in the chair as a vehicle to make each other look bad. But enough about all that. What if I told you I've got 2 brand new Disney song parodies for you tonight? Well, 1.5 in any event, since I've only got 1 verse for the second one. But I couldn't let tonight's whole episode go by without remarking on the Disney Company, a brand that built its reputation on wholesome family entertainment, going all in, completely off the deep end in the effort to trans the kids and bring gay porn into your local kindergarten classroom. Now, when Bob Chapek was first hired to replace Bob Iger as CEO at Disney, the conventional wisdom at the time, based on a lot of reports from both from inside the company and the industry at large, was that the board was unhappy with the Disney brand increasingly being identified with political radicalism and sexual perversion. Not unreasonably, so Chapek's assignment was going to be to dial back the woke and reposition Disney as a middle American brand that can appeal to everyone like it used to. So how did that work out? Not very freaking well, it would seem, because apparently Disney's payroll is now overflowing with gay and trans activists who refuse to live in a world where their employer doesn't share all of their same wacky-ass political views. So when Disney made the outlandish move of not expressing an opinion about a proposed Florida law that would keep gay porn and drag queens out of the kindergarten classroom, well, that just wasn't going to stand. Because, damn it, this is the 3rd decade of the 21st century, and every children's entertainment company has to take a position on every piece of legislation that gets proposed in every single state, because social justice? Yeah, I know. You want me to shut up and get on with the singing. Fine. First, here's a classic Disney song that needs no introduction. The melody is instantly recognizable, and sometimes it gets stuck in your head to the point where you seek the sweet release of death. Or is that just me? Anyway, without further ado, it's a world of laughter, a world of tears. It's a world that's woke and it's full of queers. There's so much we can share, so don't be such a square. It's a trans world after all. And I'm going to dispense with the chorus because I think you know how the chorus goes. Anyway, here's the second verse. There is just one moon, but a million genders, so if you don't like yours, then return it to sender. If your boy parts offend, then let's get rid of them. It's a trans world after all. Another chorus. You know how it goes. I have a third verse, as soon as the prompter catches up. Alright, here we are. I like this verse. Disney's ruined Marvel and Star Wars too. There's no woke shitty remake that they won't do. So if life gives you fits, just cut off your girly bits. It's a trans world after all. And I've got this one too, with apologies in advance to the late great Jiminy Cricket. When you wish upon a star, you can choose which sex you are. Any junk your heart desires can come to you. When your wang becomes a cooter, you'll be looking so much cuter when you wish upon a star, like trans women do. Thanks for watching. See you Friday. Have a pleasant tomorrow. Do not comply. Get off my lawn.